Now I haven't forgotten about the IPS i5 since my new favorite wheel, the Z10, arrived 4 weeks ago. I stopped riding it not out of choice, but because it is, well, currently indisposed, shall we say. Anyway, this week, where is the IPS i5? And what happened to your face? Searching for that perfect helmet, and as if the fall wasn't enough, the Central Park off-road ride. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. So back to the IPS i5. I love this thing. It was portable, convenient, and just fast enough for quick runs around the neighborhood. But I always worry about getting a flat. I had patched it once, and it was a huge pain to open it up to get at the wheel.
So unfortunately, a little bit more than a week ago, it happened again, and this time was even worse. I tried first with sliming the wheel, which had work on my folding bicycle, but it did not work for this particular wheel. I'm guessing that the hole was just too large for the slime to handle it, so I had to open it up. So it took me about 4 hours to actually get this wheel open. It was stuck really well. This bearing right here is supposed to stay inside the case with the axle kind of just sliding into the center of it, but for whatever reason it's stuck to the axle. I still can't get it off right now. So, and then on top of it, once I actually pry it open and patch the wheel, I tried connecting it back together, and now the wheel wouldn't come back on. So overall, I think I need to replace that bearing, and I need to talk to Ewheel about what's the proper way to connect this thing back together. It just doesn't feel like this wheel was designed to be easily serviceable. So, you know, unfortunately, I love this wheel, the size, the convenience, and so on, but, you know, the build quality is a little bit questionable. So speaking of unfortunate event, a quick update on my crash last week.
So apparently Mother Nature decided that this whole fall business was way overrated and might as well just drop ourselves directly into the winter. Wonderful weather we are having. So beginning of last week, I had a bump on my head, a black eye, a bruised lip, and a chipped tooth, which just was wonderful to try to explain to your boss on a Monday morning why you look like you just joined the local chapter of the Underground Fight Club. And the Z10, even though it got bounced around a bit during the fall, I think it survived pretty well. The padding took most of the hit. The only visible damage was this bit of scratch on the front side, a little bit on the back, and also the right hand foot pedal, the corner, the front corner took most of the hit and bent the plate. I had to take it off because I felt like this was going to scratch the body work. But it wasn't hard to replace. I had emailed Jason at Ewheel and he sent me a replacement pretty quickly. I put it back on and then proceed to scratch it again. Wonderful. So not too bad, I would say. Even my chipped tooth got patched thanks to my wonderful dentist. Eric, you are the man. Next, we need to find that perfect helmet. But since I already drone on and on about my problems, which I'm sure you're tired of hearing by now, why don't we just jump right into the ride first for a change? So, I did mention last week that I was a bit skeptical of the existence of off-road trails in Central Park. I mean, I love Central Park. However, I gotta say that, you know, my impression of the Central Park was really having a nice picnic or doing the ride on the loop. So not exactly off-road given the density and the you know, how small the park is. Well, so when I saw the posting on the NYC Eboarding Telegram chat, I had to find out. The meetup was scheduled for Sunday at noon. I took my usual route going uptown on 1st Avenue, this time past the UN on 42nd and the Queensboro Bridge on the 59th. It was a late fall morning, likely one of the last since this year the winter seems eager to take hold of New England. We had our first snow barely halfway through November, and the snowboarder in me is eager to see more. The meeting point was halfway up Central Park at the Old Pang, which I believe translates to the House of Pain, a strange name for a place that sells bread if you ask me, but the French knows their pastry and are not to be questioned. After some chit-chats and admiring the monster boards these guys ride, we're ready to head out. But before we get onto the ride itself, you must be wondering, what happened to the full face helmet you promised to get?
So why don't you just wear your motorcycle helmet? They seem perfectly fine, right? Well, the thing about motorcycle helmet is that they're designed to take hit at much higher speed. There's nothing wrong with that. However, because of that requirement, they're designed as single-use item, as in if you ever fall while wearing one of these, you're supposed to replace it. Now, this is not as much of an issue for motorcycles since any fall are usually quite serious and replacing the helmet is kind of the least of your concern. However, that is not the case for electric unicycle or mountain biking for that matter, since fall happens quite frequently, especially if you're as clumsy as I am. So after literally buying and returning 3 different helmets, this is what I settled on in the end. The POC Coron, and I will explain a little bit why I choose it. First of all, just about everything I own is black. It's not that it's my favorite color, it's just that black seems to match everything. But it's not really there's a nice, comes with a nice bag and some, I guess, additional paddings. However, black is not really a great color for any safety equipment because black is kind of not easy to spot in traffic. So ideally you want a yellow helmet, but I really kind of didn't like the yellow color. It looks a little bit like you have a giant rubber ducky on your head. And this is what I landed on, the resin blue, which is kind of like a cool gray. Relatively chic if you ask me, although I'm sure the designer I work with would probably disagree. I also briefly considered the Bell Super 3R, and as a matter of fact that was one of the helmets I bought and returned, but I kind of really prefer the minimalistic Scandinavian design. Design horror, I know, I'm sorry. Quick note, I measure my head and I have my head circumference is 22.5 inches, which according to the POC helmet fitting guide puts me at a medium, but I know I always wear a large, so that's what I got, and it turns out to be exactly the right size. As you can see, this fit me quite snugly, so at least for me this helmet runs a little bit small compared to what they tell you. Give me a nice chipmunk chic appearances.
Now that we're settled with the helmet, let's get back to the ride. As I mentioned, I was a bit skeptical of the existence of any off-road trails in Central Park. I will soon find out how wrong I was. So one of the brilliant things that Frederick Olmsted, the designer of Central Park, did was to enhance its sense of size and scale by subtly manipulating the topography to create layers of paths through the park that exist in close proximity but yet felt visually separated. The 4 underpaths that allow vehicle crossing were great examples that often gets hammered into impressionable architectural students like I was. And well, apparently the missing off-road trails were hidden by the very same tricks. Look, real life dirt trails. The trail ran mostly parallel to the famous running path around the reservoir, and since we are after all in Central Park, there's still a decent amount of runners on the path, but since it is still slightly muddy from the recent rain, it wasn't too bad. We even encountered some rocky features, and the few monster boards on the ride had great fun powering up the especially steep sections. The Z10 fared well on both the trail and the rocky section, But since I have little experience with either and having just taken a bath fall last week, I was a bit cautious this time. Finally, a quick ride on the loop back to our starting point where the Onewheel riders have to go and recharge the deck.
Now, I have always heard great things about the Onewheels, but the range deficiency, even on the new XR boards, does crimp their style a bit. I had not charged the Z10 before I came out for the ride, since I had started the day with about 80%, and even after riding all the way up to Central Park and doing the off-road trails, I still had about 60% batteries left. Plenty to get me home or wherever I might feel like. The massive range on the electric unicycle is really one of their best traits. With the sun slowly setting, it was time to head home. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This marks the 1 month mark since I received the Z10, and it has been a challenging but really interesting wheel to ride and learn. As always, please subscribe and like the video. This is a big learning process for me, so I love to hear your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you take the time to comment. So until next episode, thank you.